Welcome, everybody. Great to have you with us on our edition 5 of our podcast, Trump This, Inside the Trump Campaign to Save America. We have a very special guest today, someone that I know very well that I've worked with in New Hampshire, one of the best candidates that we had running for Congress this past cycle in the midterms. Karoline Leavitt is with us. She's a great supporter of the president. She worked for the Trump White House during his first administration, soon to be the second, when we get this done. And now she's also the spokesperson for the official political action committee of the Trump campaign. We'll let her tell you a little bit about that, but a great role for her. And she was a very articulate spokesperson for MAGA and the America First movement in New Hampshire, losing a very close race there in November. Karoline, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much for the kind words, John, and thanks for having me. It's great to be with you, and here we are in another election fight. We didn't have much of a break from the last cycle, did we?
Well, I know you had a couple of weeks off. That was about it, and they corralled you into this. But, it was interesting. Taylor Budovich, that runs the PAC, he's the executive director. I asked him about 2 weeks ago to come on my podcast, and he said, well, I'll do anything for you, John, but let me just wait 2 weeks because I've got a spokesperson we're going to bring on, and you will love my choice. And he put LOV in caps. And I'm like, well, who's he bringing on? Like, who could that possibly be? And then, of course, when he announced it was you, I'm like, okay, that is a great choice. Tell me about your role. Tell me about what the Political Action Committee is, what your agenda is, and what your role is, Karoline.
Yeah, well, that's very kind. I am the spokeswoman now for Make America Great Again, Inc., which is the official super PAC that is supporting President Trump's bid for the White House in 2024. So we are focused on highlighting the president's messaging, highlighting the accomplishments of his administration, of which I was a part of, as you noted, John, in the White House press office, White House assistant press secretary, before coming back and running for Congress here in New Hampshire. So at MAGA Inc., we are pushing President Trump's agenda. We are highlighting everything that his campaign is doing, including their Agenda 47 policy proposals. President Trump has unleashed more policy proposals than any candidate in the 2024 race by far. Just this week, announcing new solutions to the homelessness crisis here in America. And that comes ahead of his visit to New Hampshire next week. He's going to the city of Manchester, which is a city that's been plagued by homelessness and drug addiction, like so many cities under Joe Biden's leadership in the White House. So we are focused on getting President Trump back in the White House in 2024 and also highlighting the flaws and the terrible record of his opponents in the race, in particular, Governor Ron DeSantis, who is running a shadow campaign on the Florida taxpayers' dime. And we launched an ad last week highlighting Governor DeSantis' very strange habit of eating pudding with his fingers, but also, more importantly, his really horrible record on the issue of Social Security and Medicare. He voted to cut it 3 times when he was a member of Congress. So we're taking shots at our opponents, and we are highlighting why President Trump is the best man for the job in 2024.
So, Karoline, let me get to this. Let me get to this PAC and what you guys are doing. You're already running ads against DeSantis specifically. I think it's a brilliant move because he's not announced. It's kind of a shadow campaign. He's running for president on taxpayer dollars, but he's going to all the key early states. So kind of the gig is up. But because he's not a candidate, he can't really fire back. So you guys have been relentless in attacking him. He can't return fire because he's not a candidate. And you've seen movement in the polls. Let me just give you one that came out last night in New Hampshire. About 3 months ago, we thought New Hampshire, your state, we thought that could possibly be the president's most vulnerable state early. DeSantis had a lead there. One of the early polls that came out, Trump not really done that well there. Didn't win it in 2020. Didn't do very well in 2022, as you know, in the midterms. There, the Democrats winning everything, and it looked like, well, maybe that's the race where DeSantis, maybe he pulls the upset. He can go on then and make himself viable. Got a new poll out the other day. Trump is up by 33 points, head to head with DeSantis up by 21. DeSantis has lost all traction there. Trump's gone up. Do you think the ads that your PAC is doing has hurt DeSantis?
Well, I think the ads that we've put out have helped, but I think as voters learn more about Governor DeSantis, the less they like him. The more they are introduced to him, the less they like him. He has been traveling around the country, going from state to state. He was in New Hampshire last week. He's in South Carolina today, literally campaigning while he's the governor of Florida. There was a massive flood in Fort Lauderdale last week. The airport was shut down. Governor DeSantis didn't even call the mayor of Fort Lauderdale because he was busy selling his book, but really trying to have he's having a shadow campaign for the presidency, which is really unfortunate for the great people of Florida and the taxpayers there. But the more that people are introduced to him as he runs this shadow campaign, the less they like him. And that's proven in the polls. As you mentioned, 33-point lead for President Trump here in the first in the nation primary state. The Republican base is overwhelmingly supporting Donald Trump, because the more they see of him, the more they remember how much better their lives were under his leadership, in comparison, especially to the disastrous agenda of Joe Biden that has led to record high inflation, ripping off hardworking American families of hundreds of dollars every single week to pay for groceries and for gas, the war on our domestic energy production, the wide open southern border, fentanyl overdoses reaching 110,000 last year alone. The list goes on and on. Americans are fed up with the disastrous Biden agenda. They are rallying around Donald Trump, frankly, more than ever before, especially in light of this witch hunt out of New York, the witch hunt in Georgia. Republican voters see that Donald Trump's the only Republican, or frankly, candidate on both sides of the aisle that the establishment is attacking. Therefore, he's the only candidate that they want to support, because it shows, the more he's attacked, the more it shows how much the establishment in the DC swamp fears him. And that's very attractive to Republican voters who want a leader who is going to put them first again, especially during this dire time under Joe Biden's leadership in tenure.
Now, Karoline, a lot of people blamed the president for the losses in New Hampshire, right? Your loss, the other gentleman that ran for Congress got beat. Of course, the U.S. senator got reelected there, and he didn't, even though he didn't endorse Don Bolduc in the primary, he was very favorable to him. I endorsed him, obviously, but we got a lot of flack on that, saying, "Hey, Trump is not popular in New Hampshire. He backed these candidates, you included. You guys went down the tubes. What changed?"
People can analyze my race all they want, right? I was the candidate, and I can tell you my loss had absolutely nothing to do with President Trump. The Republican base overwhelmingly supports President Trump. I ran on the MAGA agenda, and I think that's why I won a very competitive primary by 10 points, because Republican voters here and independents support the America First agenda. They support unleashing our domestic energy production. Here in New Hampshire, we have been hit harder than almost any other state when it comes to our electric bills, our utility bills, and the war on our domestic energy here in New England in cold weather states really hit a lot of people hard this past winter. So we are seeing the dire consequences of the Biden administration firsthand. That's why people are rallying around and for President Trump in 2024. I have no doubt in my mind, and I said this 6 months ago, that he will win the New Hampshire primary for the third time, and the polls are proving that.
So let's go to the event coming up on April 27th. I got an invite for that. Still thinking about going on April 27th in New Hampshire. Tell me about what that event is.
Well, you should definitely come. This is a campaign event, so I would defer to the campaign on what their plans are.
Of course.
But I will be on Newsmax covering the event, covering President Trump's speech. I am sure, as he always does, he will bring the heat, he will bring the fire, and he will talk about the issues that are important to the people here in New Hampshire, like he has done in states across the country at his rallies in Texas. So many great states. He's highlighting the issues that are important to the great Americans in those states, whether it's the border, whether it's the fentanyl crisis, the homelessness crisis, and he's putting forth new innovative policy solutions that he will push for when he's elected as the 47th president.
Karoline, I want to talk about your PAC, the Make America Great Again Inc. PAC, which is kind of the PAC to help elect Trump president. The PACs of the past, we all know this, and this is a tough question, but it's on a lot of people's minds. There was a lot of grift going on, right? A lot of it. You weren't involved, obviously, but people are very reluctant now to give money to the PAC, and I've heard them talk on my radio show about it because of the level of grifters that were involved in it in 2020. And there were a lot. There were bus tours to nowhere, people getting paid, $25,000 a month to, ride around in a tour bus. And I mean, it just went on and on and on. Campaign ran out of money in October, had to take, they raised $1.2 billion, had to take ads off the air in Milwaukee, Phoenix, Atlanta, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, all the major markets. That was the campaign. But a lot of people felt that the PACs of the past, RNC was involved in it. They just don't feel their money was well spent. Tell me how Make America Great Again Inc. PAC is going to be different from the grift we saw going on in 2020.
MAGA Inc. is efficient and we are effective. And I would point to the ad that we released last week, again, highlighting Ron DeSantis' very strange characteristic of eating pudding with his fingers. I can't even say that with a straight face, but most importantly, his record on Social Security, which is an issue that he is largely out of step with the American people, Republicans and Democrats on both sides of the aisle. 80% of which, more than 80% of which, support protecting Social Security benefits. Governor DeSantis, when he was a congressman, voted to slash them 3 times. He supported Paul Ryan's plan to overhaul Medicare, and he supports raising the retirement age to 70. Contrast that to President Trump's record. He said he would always protect Social Security and Medicare for our great hardworking seniors. He delivered on that. It was protected when he was in office. So his record speaks for itself. And at MAGA Inc., we have exposed the record and the differences, the sheer differences on this very important issue between Governor DeSantis and President Trump. The effectiveness of this ad was proven, one, by the Google searches last Friday. Ron DeSantis pudding was the #1 search in terms of Ron DeSantis on Google last week. There were a plethora of headlines about this ad. Every major network in the country was covering it and talking about DeSantis's record. The polls prove that this is an issue the American people don't agree with him on, which also proves his unelectability in a general election. A lot of people say, I think DeSantis is more viable in a general against Joe Biden. Absolutely not. He is wildly out of step on one of the most important issues to the American electorate, both, again, Republicans, Democrats, and independents on this issue of Social Security. So we've highlighted that. Donald Trump is surging in the polls. Governor DeSantis is dropping in the polls. His campaign is imploding before it has even begun. And it's not just proven in the polls, John, that's also proven in the endorsement records of both President Trump and the flatlined endorsement record of Governor DeSantis. President Trump has earned the support of more than 50 House GOP members in Congress. 20% of Senate Republicans are supporting President Trump. I don't believe one is supporting Governor Ron DeSantis. Governor Ron DeSantis only has one congressional endorsement from his home state of Florida, where he's the leader. 7 House Republicans have endorsed President Trump, many of them coming this week alone. A really striking quote yesterday from Congressman Greg Steube of Florida, who said in his 5 years in Congress, he has never heard from Governor DeSantis. But when Greg Steube had a near fatal accident, Donald Trump was one of the first people to call him when he was in the ICU. The more people get to know Ron DeSantis, the less they like him. That's true of members of Congress, and it's also true of American voters, too.
All right, so the ads and the PR you're doing is certainly effective. But comment a little bit about, you said you guys are effective and efficient. Are we going to see a PAC that's lean and mean? Because people that they give money to this PAC, they want to be sure it's utilized in the proper way. And that's why I keep bringing this up, because so many people have said, look, I'm just not going to give any money based on what happened in 2020 because it was like wasted. And a lot of people got rich off it and, was not particularly effective. So it seems like what you're saying that this PAC is going to be different. I know your executive director, Taylor Budowich, very, very well. And it seems like what you're saying is this thing is going to be a lean, mean operation, and if you donate to it, the money is going to go to the money is going to be meaningful, not basically go to nonsense.
Yeah, we are efficient and effective, and you can give to MAGA Inc. You can also give directly to President Trump's campaign to support the efforts on that side as well. And again, the efforts are working. And the witch hunts in New York, the witch hunt in Georgia, the way that the mainstream media continually goes after Donald Trump, no one knows this better than you, John. You've been covering it for years now. These endless witch hunts prove that we, the people, need to stand with President Trump. We must rally around him because he is the only one that the Democrats fear. He's the only one that they don't want to run against in 2024 because they are so fearful of what he will do when he gets back in that White House in terms of especially draining the swamp. And he began those efforts in his last administration. Unfortunately, they were cut short because of the 2020 election. However, I have no doubt that when he gets back in that White House, he will be more fired up than ever to fight on behalf of the American people. And that's why they should support him with everything they can. And as President Trump has said himself, look, if you're suffering under Joe Biden's disastrous economy, which many Americans are, don't give. Like, we want you to protect yourselves and your families and continue to run your businesses. However, if you have some room to give to the president in this fight, you should, because this is truly the greatest, most important election in our time. And we say that every election cycle, right? This is the most important election, but it couldn't be more clear that this truly is the most important election in American history. The Democrat regime over the past few years has amassed so much power in Washington, D.C., giving billions of dollars to Ukraine and neglecting the American people. We see the Democrats going after good-hearted Americans and President Trump himself time and time again, whether it's the FBI labeling parents as domestic terrorists, on it goes. And we really must rally again around President Trump and support him in his bid for the White House in 2024.
Well, it's beyond the most important election ever, because if we lose, you basically have no country. I mean, this is how dire this is. People want to donate. Before I forget, people want to donate to your PAC, and I'm encouraging it, guys, because look, I've been with this thing since 2015, but I'm outside of the circle, but I'm in the circle, so I get to see everything. And the 2020 grift it was appalling. I mean, I called them out on it many, many times. This is different. I love what way you guys are running this PAC. I know the people in it. It's a lean, mean, effective machine, like you say. So people do want to donate. Where do they go?
You can go to magapac.com for more information about our PAC. And again, you can also go to the official campaign website and send your donations there too. Two entities that you can choose to support.
And both of these, if you donate to it, folks, both of this, well, one, it goes to the Trump campaign. You're not going to get the bureaucracy in the campaign that you got in 2020. I mean, I remember, we have to keep bringing this up, Karoline, because we don't want to see a repeat of it. But I remember the first meeting I went in the campaign, and I was at a bunch of them as one of the preferred media people. But I remember the first one I went to, it was in some plush office in, I think, Arlington, looking over the Potomac, very expensive offices. The level of bureaucracy in that campaign was stunning compared to what I worked with in 2016. And then, the PACs were a mess, and the RNC had their hand in the pie. They didn't do anything. And I mean, it goes on and on and on. This is very different. And you see the effectiveness of the MAGA Inc. PAC right now, because you see the ads on TV and you see them on digital media, and they're taking advantage of the fact that DeSantis can't fire back, which is very, very astute. Also, they put on a big rally that I emceed at CPAC, that the place was packed. So they're doing a lot with a little. So if you give money, that's going to go directly to being effective and not to the 2020 grift machine, or that I basically called it. Karoline, I'm going to get to Iowa in a second, but I just want to mention that this segment of our podcast, Trump This, Inside the Trump Campaign to Save America, brought to you by our good friends at Z-Stack. Now, you know what? I never get sick. I never have the flu. I don't get COVID because I don't rely on big pharma. I don't rely on the stupid masks that don't work or rolling the dice that you're not going to get sick. I travel a lot. I got to be on the top of my game. Dr. Zelenko's lab has just released Z-Flu adult super formula gummies. Now, I love the gummies. I take them as soon as I get up. They actually taste good. But the Z-Flu is immune boosting elderberry coupled with vitamin C, D, and zinc. Keep your body's immune system at its strongest. Keep yourself and your family safe this flu season. Go to zstacklife.com Godzilla. zstacklife.com Godzilla. Promo code Godzilla is going to save you 10%. zstacklife.com/Godzilla in order today for you and your family. Especially if you got kids, they're going to love the gummies because they taste really good and they're going to keep you safe. Caroline's going to get this as soon as she gets off the air because we need Karoline healthy and fired up. We're going to try to talk her into coming to Richmond. We call it Rich Vegas this weekend. Karoline, tell me about Iowa. I think I got a good feel for New Hampshire. I was there last time. Trump, we got beat in Iowa. We finished second to Cruz after the Jeff Rowe team, put on the Ben Carson fake, saying that he dropped out of the race as he went home to get a suit, to get another suit. They didn't have the people there, so they're handing out flyers saying he dropped out. Cruz ended up beating us there by, I think, 1.5. Then we came to New Hampshire and blew the field out. Tell us what's going to be different in Iowa this time.
President Trump is already holding a commanding lead in the polls for the 2024 Republican primary in Iowa. I believe the latest poll has him up by double digits over Governor Ron DeSantis. Nobody else is even close to President Trump in Iowa. And that's because his record, especially for the great people of Iowa in his administration, really speaks for itself. Iowa is known for having a lot of great, hardworking, patriotic American farmers. Nobody has done more for them than President Trump did, making China pay. The ag industry in Iowa was absolutely booming. And now you hear about the sad stories coming from Iowa, great people there under Joe Biden's administration. Increased regulation, increased inflation is putting a lot of these family-owned farms literally out of business. Generational family businesses going under. They cannot compete with our enemies, frankly, especially China overseas, which is very, very sad to see. And so the unfortunate consequences of the Joe Biden economic agenda are certainly helping Iowans rally around President Trump because they remember how much they did for him. And so nobody will stand a chance for President Trump in Iowa, that's for sure.
I think I like the Iowa ground game. You obviously aren't involved in the campaign, so I don't want to go there. But the young fellow they hired to run the Iowa operation, I know well. He's very, 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 very talented. Worked with him in Virginia on some stuff. So, you look at these early primaries, and I keep saying this: you got to find a pathway here. And none of these other candidates are going to gain any traction. I mean, Mike Pence is at 2%. He's done. Nikki Haley, nobody cares. Tim Scott, nice enough young senator. I'm sure he's got a future. It's not going to be in 24. Just basically a two-man race, assuming DeSantis gets in. Then you just got to ask yourself. I mean, where's he going to win, right? Because you got to get 2,200 delegates in Milwaukee, right? And the thing about us, everybody on this team, whether it's inside or outside, has been through this in 2016. So we know the process. We got burned a few times. Colorado, we got burned. Virginia, we got burned. I got outmaneuvered there by Cuccinelli, who blew up my deal, and I had to get Eric Trump involved. So, we got beat up sometimes because we didn't know exactly everything that was going on. That doesn't happen now. We've already been through this. Mm-hmm. So you look at DeSantis and you say to yourself, if you're running his campaign, you're not going to win Iowa. Farmers, you nailed it, right? That's number one. Number two is evangelicals. Everybody went there and talked for years. Trump went there, became president, 3 conservative justice, Roe v. Wade gone. Mm-hmm. He's the only one that will ever be able to say that. So you combine those two factors, Trump is going to win those caucuses. He's up by 33 in New Hampshire. He's gonna win that with or without Sununu. He's got an overwhelming lead in South Carolina, and now he's ahead in Florida.
Mhm.
And you got to ask yourself, where's DeSantis going to get any delegates? I mean, Super
Right.
Tuesday, Georgia, maybe. Where
Right.
you got to win state. If you get beat in Iowa, New Hampshire, and South Carolina, doesn't matter what happens in Florida. That campaign's over,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, you're nailing it, John. Double-digit lead for President Trump in Iowa, 33-point lead in New Hampshire, 22-point lead in South Carolina as of today. Meanwhile, Ron DeSantis is ripping off Florida taxpayers and going there to try to desperately drum up support. Also worth noting, Nikki Haley is in third place in her home state. President Trump holding a lead over Governor DeSantis in his home state of Florida. Georgia, huge pull out last week. He's leading there too. There is no path to victory for any other Republican other than Donald Trump. So anyone else who gets in this race is doing it out of their own selfish interest, not for the best interest of the GOP. If they truly cared about Republican voters, they would adhere to the will of Republican voters, which has been proven week after week, poll after poll. They are rallying around Donald Trump. We have a serious fight on our hands against the Democrats and Joe Biden. And if these Republicans truly cared about taking it to the woke left and stopping the Biden administration in its tracks, then they would stay out of the race. But Governor DeSantis is a self-interested man, as we've seen time and time again. And again, the more people that are introduced to him, the less they like him, as proven in the polls, as proven by the endorsements. Just yesterday, John, DeSantis went to D.C. to try and drum up some support there. Several members went to go talk to him. Not one member endorsed Governor DeSantis. One member came out of that meeting and said, "I just met with DeSantis. I'm endorsing President Trump. He's the only guy."
That was a congressman in Florida, right? That was a congressman in Florida.
It was Congressman Lance Gooden of Texas.
Oh, Texas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he said he met with DeSantis I always said, hey, he's a really nice guy. And he comes out, he says, but after meeting with him, I'm going to endorse Trump. Not exactly a ring endorsement. But look, DeSantis is a good governor. And, he's very hard nosed. And a lot of people like what he's doing. I got a daughter that lives in Florida who's a Democrat. She loves him. She voted for him and says he's the best thing that ever happened to Florida. So that's like a good thing. But, he's like Cruz, right? If you meet Cruz personally, you don't like him. He's just not a likable guy. And so every time he would go to an event, he'd actually, that if he made a speech, it's fine and get him off the stage. But if he's mingling with people, you just don't like him. He's just a creepy guy. And so DeSantis kind of having the same effect. And I'm not taking any away from his governing prowess, but he goes and meets with him personally, and he just doesn't come off. And he's very driven. Everybody gets that, but he doesn't really do himself any favors in a one-on-one situation. And that's the thing about New Hampshire. You got to connect. Nobody knows better than you do. You won that primary. Everybody wrote you off. Of course, we endorsed you, but you won that thing by 10. It's a blowout because you knew how to connect with people. You had all those small events, one after the other. And so you know how to connect with people. That's what you got to do in New Hampshire. That's what you got to do in Iowa. DeSantis doesn't have that ability. He's kind of a standoffish guy. He's kind of cold and the opposite of Trump. And so I just don't see it.
Yeah, nobody knows how to connect with voters better than President Trump does. I saw that firsthand working in his White House, the personal correspondence that he would write to people that would visit with him, the personal phone calls that he would make to Americans, everyday Americans that were suffering. He would reach out to them personally through letters, through telephone calls, and surprise a lot of really great people across the country because he deeply cares about the American people. He doesn't have to do this, right? He was living a very good life prior to ever running for president. He certainly didn't have to run again now in 2024 and put himself through all of this hell that the Democrats are throwing at him. But he's doing it because he loves this country. He's doing it because he loves the American people. And he's doing it because he understands that if it's not him, We are going to lose America as we know it, with another 4 years of Joe Biden as president. It's hard to imagine how much more damage the Democrats and the Joe Biden administration can do to our country if they are granted another 4 years in power. We cannot let that happen.
Well, just a testament on President Trump right now, and you mentioned personal notes. I mean, with you think about everything he's got going on, he's in the middle of he's going to get indicted in Atlanta. He's been indicted in New York. He's going to get indicted in Florida. So he's got all these indictments. He got all this on his mind, and he's always sent me notes. Right? I mean, I've gotten him. I got him for forever. So right in the middle of this, it's about 3 weeks ago. He sends me a note because he knows my son's a baseball pitcher, and he's probably going to go in the MLB draft to go to West Virginia, and he sends me a little note. Hey, giving your son Joe my best. I hope the Yankees draft him. I mean, who's got time for that, right? I mean, he's got all this going on, and like shows up on my mailbox like Donald J. Trump. You're the best. I mean, it's just the guy is with every when you mentioned the call to the Florida congressman that was in an accident, got critical injured. I mean, he still makes time out of his day to connect with people. That's very, very rare.
Yeah,
Karoline.
yeah. I thought Congressman Greg Steube's testimony to the thoughtfulness of President Trump and the lack of thoughtfulness out of Governor DeSantis. Right, the governor is the leader of the state of Florida. He has a congressman who he's never even called in 5 years. He's part of the team, right? You should be corresponding with your team. You should be having outreach to the delegation in D.C. The only call these Congress people have ever received from Governor DeSantis or his political people is now when he's running for president and wants their support and their endorsement. I'll share an anecdote with you, John. When I was working in the White House in the press office, we were constantly bringing up the victims of crime in Democrat-run cities such as Chicago and highlighting the Trump administration's efforts to curb that violence and curb that crime when Democrat cities and local leaders were refusing to do so. We were standing with law enforcement very strongly. President Trump has been and always will be very strongly supported by the law enforcement community across our country. However, Kayleigh McEnany, my former boss, was bringing up the victims of these crimes in our press briefings. And it was President Trump who brought up the idea of writing letters to these individuals, these victims, young children in Chicago who were being murdered in broad daylight, who Lori Lightfoot, the former mayor, couldn't give a crap about in her own city. The president of the United States took the time to sign and send letters, hand signed letters to these victims and their families. That was very touching, and I'm always very honored to be a part of that administration. Now honored to serve in this role for MAGA Inc.
Okay, so let's we're a little short on time here, so I just want to get to another topic. These indictments, he's going to get indicted in Atlanta over this ridiculous RICO charge over that phone call that was perfect, by the way. And he's likely to get indicted in Florida. Is there a concern that at some point these indictments pile up and maybe voters start to say, maybe we just need to go in another direction? There's too much baggage here. Maybe we need something new. Any concern about that within your pack?
No. The more the Democrats and the regime in DC go after Donald Trump, the more voters rally around him because they recognize he is the greatest threat to the establishment. He's a unique threat to the establishment. Why is that? It's because he promises peace around the world. He promises no blank checks to Ukraine. We're going to take care of our own here in America. And the billion-dollar war machine who wants to continue wars abroad and keep sending our American sons and daughters to die overseas, they absolutely hate that Donald Trump promises peace. That's why the establishment is after him so much. Republican voters, everyday Americans recognize that. So the more they continue to go after him, the more voters will rally around him. And as we've seen time and time again, the more they go after him, the harder Donald Trump fights back. So we have no doubt he will continue to do that.
I think we're in really good shape. I love your pack. I love what you're doing. I love the fact that they made you spokesperson. Taylor was right. He said, you're going to love my choice. He nailed it. And I hope to see you this weekend. I'm certainly going to try to make it on the 27th. Karoline, again, people want to donate, get involved. The money is going to go directly to the Political Action Committee or directly to the Trump for President campaign. Again, where do they go?
MAGAPAC.com. You can also go to the official campaign website. Follow us on social media as well. Twitter, Truth Social, MAGA Inc. War Room. We're always posting great content and keeping our voters and President Trump's supporters up to date on what he is doing. Thanks so much for having me, John.
Well, Karoline, always a pleasure to have you. And I was honored to back you in your race for Congress. You got very, very close. You ran an outstanding race. I had a chance to meet your parents and your family, all lovely people. And your enthusiasm in this campaign is infectious. So we look forward to seeing you maybe this weekend or maybe on the 27th. Karoline, I just got one more question. And it's really more about you personally, because I know you so well. You got through college on a D2 softball scholarship. You played third base. You hit third on the team. You were one of their star players and took that team. You went to St. Anselm College, and you were one of their standout players. Great athlete, great softball player. And I know for my son, who's 18, who's a ball player going to West Virginia on a scholarship, I know how hard you have to work at that level.
Yeah.
What would you think if during the spring, when you were getting ready to play, if some guy came in and said, "Hey, I want to try out for third base. I was playing ball on the D2 St. Anselm men's baseball team. I got cut, or I'm not getting the PT, and so I'm going to play for the girls' team, and I identify right now as a trans girl," and took your spot and took your scholarship. How would you? What would your reaction as an athlete have been to that, Karoline Leavitt?
You know, as an athlete who put in countless hours at the field to compete at the highest level that I possibly could, to imagine the scenario that you just laid out, John, is really unfathomable. And it's unbelievable that it's actually happening in this country under Joe Biden's leadership. And the Biden administration is not just allowing it, but they're encouraging it. They're supporting it. They are attempting to make changes to Title IX, which was signed into law decades ago, to protect the integrity of female athletics, to protect equality amongst men and women, particularly in athletics and private spaces such as bathrooms and locker rooms. They are now trying to reverse that law, negating all biological truth and objective reality. It's completely unfair. It's also very unsafe. You know, playing third base in softball, you get real close to home plate, especially when you're charging the plate, going after bunts. To imagine a man standing at the plate who is much stronger than me, much bigger than me, taking a full swing at a softball is just ludicrous. It's crazy that this is allowed to happen in America. And that's why I'm also really proud to be on President Trump's team heading into 2024, because he has been explicit on this for years, saying that in the White House, he will take executive federal action to end this war on women's sports and to stop this lunacy from the left that's allowing this to happen. It's really, really quite sad.
Well, you know, it's not only losing this scholarship or losing your place, but it's also the safety issue. As I'm thinking about you saying, you know, you got a girl. I'm sorry, you got a girl you got a woman on first base in a tie game. You're going to lay one down. You got to come charging in. You know, they decide to fake bunt, hit the ball. Basically, you're dead. I mean, that's what happened. If it hits you in the head, if it hits you in the face. So it's just incredible. And then, you know, the Republicans have actually passed a bill in Congress outlawing this, and Biden says he's going to veto it. Mm-hmm. So I mean, these people are just brain dead. But you know, it's important to get athletes like yourself, because I know how hard you worked to be at the highest level that you could be, as you said, and to play D2 third base and girls softball, and that St. Anselm has they're one of the best D2 colleges in softball in America and have been for a very, very long time. But just the thought of that, I mean, it's a crazy time, but I appreciate your sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
All right. That concludes episode 5. Trump This, Inside the Trump Campaign to Save America. And we're going to have another edition later on this week. Thank you and have a great day.